every decision that we make, everything, literally everything, even the food we eat, is an emotional decision, and how we are really good at covering that decision with logic, to justifying it with logic, if you will.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, and it really hit me when I was reading Mark Manson's material, I started paying attention to the underlying emotional drive of why people do what people do, especially when they do something stupid. Storytelling is obviously extremely powerful. You don't need to tell people about it. Everybody understands it. We've been passing information in story form since the dawn of time, since the cave people. Tell us maybe a few things that you found to be effective in storytelling, maybe how you learned it, how you became proficient at it, and maybe how somebody who's a beginner, who's only starting to write their emails, can improve their skill set in that department.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like with storytelling, one thing I'll say is that like when I started taking, copywriting more seriously and stuff, and really sort of dove headfirst into this field of persuasion copywriting, um, I had a tendency to look up like all these like storytelling frameworks and all this stuff, like how to tell good stories. And I'm not dismissing that at all. But what I'll say as a word of caution is that it can sometimes be more complicated than just telling a story as you've always known to tell it. So that's kind of one, I guess, tip I would say is that you could definitely go down the rabbit hole of like all these different frameworks, and a lot of them are proven. A lot of them definitely work. But in my experience, what I've found to be the most sustainable, the most enjoyable, and frankly generated the most revenue results for myself and some of my clients' lists is real-time storytelling. So like, for example, I do something I'll do on in both email and Twitter, or X, I guess it's called now, is like just did this thing. So like something within the past, say 24 hours, and you're just kind of reporting on it. So it's like, just did this. This is how I did it. This is what I learned. These are almost like these little mini like vignettes that are like
Right.
short stories, right? That I feel like if you approach storytelling from like a what happened today sort of a perspective, people can sort of feel the news factor of it, which is like perhaps a bit more strategic than it is tactical. But I guess if I had to like break that down into a tip, it would be like, what did you learn? And it could be something in your business. It doesn't need to be this big epic, emotional journey necessarily that happened today. That's something that's helped me a lot and allowed me to get some momentum with it. Another thing is just to kind of be aware of how you naturally like persuade, how you naturally tell stories. And this is something I learned from, I sort of took away, and it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me when Perry Marshall, he talks about how different people persuade in different ways. So some people are more kind of logical, some people are more emotional, and how if you kind of play into your natural DNA, um, I feel like you had something to say there, Igor.
I do. I actually do, but I want to let you finish your thought.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So long story short, like if you lean into your natural way of communicating, expressing, and persuading people, you'll tend to have better results than if you don't. Or at least that's kind of how I interpreted it. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah. So with that being said, like you said, like storytelling, chemical engineer, the truth is like I'm a little bit analytical. I'm very analytical. I'm very logic minded. So when I'm telling stories every single day in my emails to my list, I just let that shine. I don't try to muzzle that. I don't try to be something I'm not, for better or worse. And I find that when I do that, I get the best results, and I'm the most motivated to continue. Maybe it's
Interesting.
not copywriting 101, but
Dude, it's a very interesting angle. I've never heard the phrase "different people persuade in different ways," and I certainly cringed a little when you said that some people are more analytical on the convincing side or persuasion side, and some are more emotional. I understand what you mean. Um, I want to offer my perspective on this. So, so my background is also engineering. I
Cool.
graduated the Israeli Air Force Academy as a junior engineer in electronics. So I was, and obviously it's also the army where you're not really encouraged to think creatively in any way. So naturally, I was very analytical getting into it as well. And I think the only analytical part of my previous life that helped me out in copywriting was the fact that I learned to establish templates and patterns, meaning that I started seeing copy as a very mechanical thing: headline, subheadline, opener, bullet points, guarantee. Right. So all of a sudden, I see these building blocks, and I can put them together into a sales letter.
Mhm.
Same thing with email. There's an opener, there's something else, something else. There's the AIDA formula, right? Attention, interest, desire, action. So those made a lot of sense to me. But for many years, I really was not great at appealing to people's emotions. And I was very much a logical thinker and kind of writing in a very logical way. And it served me to an extent. My business really started booming and my conversions really skyrocketed when I started focusing on the emotional appeal of things. And when I've learned this one concept that really changed everything, like the whole game, how every decision that we make, everything, literally everything, even the food we eat, is an emotional decision, and how we are really good at covering that decision with logic, to justifying it with logic, if you will.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, and it really hit me when I was reading Mark Manson's material, I started paying attention to to the underlying emotional drive of why people do what people do, especially when they do something stupid, right? um, and I started studying the side of persuasion that did not revolve around logic, but rather revolved around emotion. However, later I also balanced it out with understanding that for every emotional decision, you also have to create a logical environment where where they can act on the decision. And I was just talking about this on the coaching call earlier today with my group, and somebody asked me this very questions, like something along the lines of like, do I like to use negative talk in my copy to motivate people or positive talk? And I spoke about how in my copy I actually love two things. One, I love building curiosity.
Yeah.
I think it's such an underrated and so powerful of a driver. It's crazy. And two, the other thing I love to do, I love making people angry. I love making people angry, obviously not at myself, but rather together, to be angry together at somebody else, preferably somebody who I can sell against, right? So, for example,
Yeah.
for many, many years now, I've been selling against Facebook, meaning that
Mhm.
I've been preaching building an email list, I've been preaching paid media, I've been preaching not giving money to Facebook, not building a social media following, not wasting time on building a fan page. And so Facebook becomes this big enemy. And now me and my audience can be angry at Facebook together every time I'll tell a story about, losing my ad accounts or being shadow banned or whatever. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think it's I think it's a very effective way to sell.
No, it truly,
Um,
truly is. So what is your go-to in storytelling or in anything really? Like, what is your go-to style for persuasion?
so I like to just hook people in with something that's going to be, fascinating to them, but seems a bit weird. So something is a little bit off, and then you kind of get them reading, and then basically you want to. I found pretty good results if I kind of deliver one little dose of like a useful tip or tidbit or insight or like takeaway from a short story. Like you said, ideally something that there's definitely some degree of emotionality in it, even if it's just like a quick win I had or like a quick win one of my clients had or something like that, something that might get people excited. And then using that as a little bait to be like, if you like that thing, click over here and, inside the product specifically here, you can get the full dose that you just started kind of consuming in the free angle. So that, that comes down to, I guess, like you said, the emotion of curiosity. Honestly, I think it also depends. Like if I'm running my own list for myself, it's a different approach than of course if I'm running it for someone else, right? But like for myself, for my business, um, I found just consistently showing up and just like allowing my personality to really shine, even if that personality is like some nerdy analytical dude, and then trying to share things that allow people to take that one next step, and then being like, constantly saying, if you want to go, the full solution here, here's how you get it, and pitching it. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. Maybe it didn't, but
You know, I giving them a bit of a taste and then inviting them to explore more definitely generates that curiosity. It's not the sort of answer I was looking for in terms of the subtle persuasion technique. And I can appreciate the fact that you just never had to sit down and conceptualize it for sure. Also, same for me if I'm writing a copy for somebody else or helping like a friend with their webinar. It's a different. It's almost like I don't put brakes on it. Like with my own stuff, I noticed I will be putting one foot on the gas, foot on the brakes. We'll be triple checking every claim, really trying to not say anything that would be way too out there, not to push too much, right? I was building this webinar where I was basically selling another coach, so to speak. Dude, it's like someone just cut my brakes off completely, and I felt so free, and I was pitching like you know like I'm a used car salesman. And I say it like it might sound very bad. Like a used car salesman doesn't really have a good image. What I mean by that is I didn't like hold back on making a claim. I didn't sound apologetic. I didn't sell off the back of my heels. I just went on full on, really with full confidence, and it was so freeing as an experience. And I remember discussing this with an ex Agora copywriter, and who actually kind of like you made a transition. So I know you didn't give up clients altogether, but he was in that moment when he was transitioning from client work to starting his own newsletter. And I asked him, like, how is it for you? What's more challenging, writing copy for you or writing copy for a client? And he said that writing copy for himself was by far the most challenging thing he'd ever done, and writing copy for a client is so much easier. What about you?
yeah, I could totally agree and relate to that statement. Like, I think I might have even mentioned this to you once in passing when we were organizing this show. Like, imposter syndrome is definitely something that I struggle with. And this sense that I can look at someone else's offer, I can look at someone else's personal brand, I can look at their credibility, you name it, and um, like you said, I have no problem highlighting all that stuff. I have no problem shamelessly promoting what's, a good product to be promoting to a market that wants it. But when it comes to myself, I definitely, with my own email list, I have one foot on the pedal, one foot on the brake. And it's something I do need a breakthrough, because it's definitely costing me, and it will continue to cost me. But it's so true, right? Like, it's so easy for me even just to look at people and give them advice, and then look at myself. And my wife sort of teases me about it, because I'll be like, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z, and then she'll just say to me, "What would you say to your clients?" And then I'll be like, "Oh, I'd probably say, you have a this problem, you have an offer problem." And she'd be like, "There you go, there's your answer," right? Or whatever it might be that day. So,
Dude, it's a
uh,
classic. It's a classic. What do they say? Do as I say, not as I do.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Hey, we're running out of time. So if somebody's listening to this and they want to sign up on your newsletter to learn from you about email marketing, especially if they're a coach or a consultant, as well as if they wanted to hire you to manage their list or do any kind of one-off work, where can they go?
Yeah, so the best bet would probably be go to dylanbridger.com. So that's DYLANBRIDGER.com. Or if you're on Twitter or X, look me up there at Dylan_Bridger. And if you go to my bio link on Twitter, you'll see a link to my opt-in page where you can get on my email list. And on my website, there's also an option as well. So that's the best place to find me.
All right, there you have it, guys. The links will be in the show notes on listbuildinglifestyleshow.com website. So, Dylan, thank you so much for spending this hour with me. Appreciate it. And until next time we chat, have a good one.